Listen up closely, let the games begin. Top pick sweepers every week I spin. The FF universe here to help you win. The fantasy football universe.
Pack it up, pack it in. Let me begin to tell you that we are the fantasy football universe, the FF times 2, the FFU. Welcome in. I came to win. Battle me. That's a sin, Jesse. We're going to talk a little bit about the House of Pain. That is our consensus running backs this week. But before we jump around the NFL and talk about these backs, Jesse, how are you, sir?
I'm glorious. The king has returned. Christian McCaffrey coming back into our lives. The Christian McCaffrey believers, which should be everyone at this point. You can do you're getting 20 plus points this week, if not 30. Like we're firing them up. Let's go, baby. I am excited. Nice getting some difference makers back in lineups.
That's it. The king has returned, Jesse. I thought you were talking about Jonathan Brooks, who is designated off of IR this week. We'll see what happens, although in the same day, Chuba gets a 4-year deal. So we'll have to see what happens with Brooks. But at least he's not shelved for the season. That's at least something we can hang our hats on so far this year. Holy crap. Anyway, so we got some backs. We'll go over some of the news on Thursday, just before the game time. So this will be published. So depending on when you are watching it, the Thursday night game between the Bengals and Ravens may or may not have been played. So just keep that in mind. And we will go through everything that is relevant, including guys like this. CMC is daddy, but guys like this. Don't do him like that, Tyrone. Or do him like that repeatedly, Tyrone. He's going to have an awesome game, Tyrone Tracy. We'll get into him shortly. But let's start with our top 6 consensus running backs. Again, this is a consensus between Jesse and myself, and we're going to go through these names. And we start off with Mr. Reverse Hurdle himself, Saquon Barkley at 1 against Dallas. Yikes, Dallas. Derrick Henry at 2, big monster of a man, and winter is coming. Devon Achane all the way up at 3, and I think he's locked in there for the foreseeable future, at least for the rest of the season. Bijan at 4. Christian McCaffrey, our consensus RB5, and Kyron Williams rounding it out versus Miami at home. Jesse, do you want to talk about your boy CMC?
Yeah, I'll talk about CMC in a second, but I just want to highlight HN. Like he's the focal point of that entire offense. So
yes,
it's interesting because like we're getting lower on Tyreek. Waddle is just the guy that we hope works out, and it might not. But yeah, HN's focal point of that offense. Like he's getting such bunch targets every week. He's getting touched. He's an explosive monster. With Tua, as long as Tua is on the field and healthy, so cross your fingers that's the case for the rest of the season. Achan's like locked in 20 plus points per game. Like I think he's great. Yeah. Another high scoring affair against the Rams. We love all the guys in this matchup, so we're playing all of them. And yeah, to talk about Christian McCaffrey. I mean, the Bucs defense is better against running backs. Like they're not terrible against them or anything, but it's Christian McCaffrey. You know the volume, and he's been the best running back in fantasy ever since he stepped on the earth. It seems like in 2018, just been nonstop producer. So. I get it. He's a little bit lower, like, and this is like 3. It's like, oh no, or 6 or whatever. It's like, yeah, we're just a little bit lower than we would be, but I think after this week we'll be like, he's back to our top 2. He's just gonna live there. So as long as he's healthy, you know what you get with McCaffrey. It's nice to see that name come across the top. It feels so good. Yeah, 100%. I like both of you guys a lot.
We don't want to see the setbacks with McCaffrey. I think that's the one thing we're concerned about. So far, no pain. He has been providing plenty of pain for fantasy managers who drafted him at the 101 this year. Hopefully you have survived that draft pick. If you have, you are very happy to get Christian McCaffrey back. We are very happy to get Christian McCaffrey back. You know who's not very happy to see Christian McCaffrey? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers crap-tastic defense this week. They're going to get crushed. Moving on to our second tier here. We have running back 7 through 12, and we will start with Jonathan Taylor against Buffalo. Breece Hall at 8 at Arizona. Alvin Kamara 9. Tyrone Tracy, let's go, at 10 at Carolina. Jahmyr Gibbs 11. Joe Mixon at 12. Jesse, talk to me.
Oh, you know we got to highlight Tracy. This is the guy we were pounding the table for all offseason. It is coming through, folks. He is getting a bunch of touches each game. And the nice thing about it is this matchup is the best in football. Nobody gives them more points to the running backs than the freaking Carolina Panthers. So We talked about earlier in the week. I said he could push for 150 yards. I don't think that's a locked in for total, but I think that's well within his range of outcomes. He gets a couple touchdowns. So, yeah, if you have Tracy, he is a locked in RB1. You love this matchup, and you're going to fire him up because the snap share of the usage is really great. So, anybody in this tier, we got a pound table for a guy because if not now, then why not? I think with Breece Hall, it's interesting. I know we both are kind of expecting the targets to come back because they were not there last week. So if that does regress to what we saw in the first couple weeks of the Todd Downing, Breece Hall could elevate back into that like top 4 discussion. And the other guy is Jonathan Taylor going up against Buffalo since the beginning of the season. Buffalo is a team that just gouges points to running backs. Jonathan Taylor, he's a really good running back. He has Joe Flacco. You know how this is going to go. He's going to get a ton of touches. He should find his way in the end zone a few times. He'll probably get some targets too. So I know Jonathan Taylor hasn't been the high-end producer. He could be the high-end producer for you this week. So yeah, these guys are all great. And running backs in general, I think this week, like there just seems like there's a ton of really, really good plays. So you'll see some names coming where you're like, they're that low. I'm like, yeah, that's just how good this week is at running back.
For sure. I was going to bring up JT because he gets that Buffalo defense as you referenced. You know who got that Buffalo defense last week? Devon Achane, and he absolutely went off. You know who else got it? My boy Raheem Mostert, almost 100 total yards from scrimmage on 12 touches, fumbled, didn't see him again. But we're still firing up Raheem as well, who we'll talk about in a little bit, I'm sure. Tyrone Tracy to the goddamn moon. Let's do it. Let's talk about guys outside of our top 12. This is our next group, starting with James Cook at 13 at Indy. Juicy matchup, especially if Keon doesn't go. They may have to rely on Cook, although Ray Davis is pushing in for more work. We have DeAndre Swift at 14 versus New England. Not a good matchup, but Mr. Necessary there in Chicago. Aaron Jones at 15. J.K. Dobbins at 16. Kareem Hunt against the Denver Broncos at 17. I have faded the crap out of him this week, which is why he is this low in our rankings. And James Conner at 18. Jesse, who do you like here?
Well, let's talk about Swift. I know it seems like it's not a good matchup as you referenced. The Patriots give the 4th most points to running backs. Like they are struggling on the ground against running backs. So if you have Swift, you got to play him this week. Like you got to put him in your lineups because you know that offense has struggled for the most part. DeAndre Swift's been the one exception who's been really good for you this year. Outside the first couple of weeks, like he's been their guy that they can count on. I'm just expecting them to just rely heavily on DeAndre Swift because like the passing game and stuff's not working. Shannon Waldron's just in his bag a little too much. Smoking that peace pipe, whatever you're doing, Waldron, put it down. Just give him the rock. Let's do that. I like him a lot this week. Yeah, exactly. You need to just tone it down. The Cook stuff's a little weird. With Indy, it's a solid matchup. They did get their guys back on the D-line, so it might not be as juicy matchup, but he's as efficient as ever. It's just if he gets those goal line looks and the targets, right? That's kind of the things with James Cook. Because when he doesn't get the touchdowns, it's a little bit boomer bust. Like last week, he had 16 touches, but only 49 total yards. It was just on the flip side for Achane when it was like world beater status. James Cook really had one of his worst performances of the season. I'm expecting him to have a better game against Indianapolis. This Buffalo offense is so good. They're not as reliant on James Cook as some of these other backs, but it's a really good matchup. You fire him up. You know he's a good guy, and he can give you 20, 25 points this week if it works out. So I do like him. That's why he's still so high in the rankings, even though last week was a little disappointing.
100%. Another James Conner is an interesting one this week. I'll be, looking to see what he's able to do against this Jets defense. Certainly, he put up 18 and 107 without scoring a touchdown, has received roughly 3 to 4 targets a game, which is also nice. But Trey Benson worked in a lot last week against Chicago. I know they were up big, so some of that was garbage time production, but they were working him in earlier in the game too. Do they want to work him in against the Jets and try and keep this a ground and pound game? I think that's probably where they have the best, chance to win. And if that's the case, how involved is Trey Benson, and does it come at the expense of James Conner? I think probably not, but it's at least interesting to see. They have a bye next week, and then we'll have to see what happens after that. Does the rookie get more run after the bye? Let's move on to our next tier. This is our tier 4, 19 to 24, our back end RB2s. We start with David Montgomery at Houston, the juiciest of juicy matchups. The question is, does he score this week, or does Gibbs steal it all? You got Tony Pollard in not a great matchup at 20. Chuba Hubbard, the 4-year, what is it, 27 mil? I don't know. He got something pretty juicy.
Yeah, it was a good deal for him.
Yeah. The $33 million man, Chuba Hubbard, at 21 at the Giants. You got Najee at 22, Chase Brown at 23, and Ramondre Stevenson rounding it out at 24. Who do you like here?
Like I know we're excited for Jonathan Brooks, but clearly Carolina loves Chuba Hubbard and what he's done. He's been their best player pretty much this entire year. He's like ninth in rushing yards over expectation. He's been really good. He's not doing any missed tackles forced, but he's getting that run when he's been pretty good. He just does things right for them. I think only twice this season has he had less than 13 touches in a game. It was the first 2 weeks. Ever since then, like the guy's just been consistent, steady producer. Like you saw it last week, he had 15 carries, 70 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like it's the Giants defense. I don't expect them to do much. I think it's a good matchup for him. If you're playing him, like you're going to play him. I wouldn't worry about it too much. The interesting thing with Pollard is he didn't play the entire week, and we were like scared of playing in that matchup. Yeah. All he gets is like a top 3 opportunity share. Like he's just a ton of touches, was really, really good. So I know this matchup against the Chargers isn't great, but like we talk about these bad offense, similar to Chuba Hubbard. The only thing really working for the Titans is Tony Pollard. So until that changes, you still got to fire him up. It might be not the best play in the world, but like he's just been really good. So if you're in that situation, we're in kind of this back end RB2 range. Or we'll get to a couple of guys later who have just really bad matchups, even though it's good, like they're good players. You kind of just go that. So it's interesting to talk about these guys. And the one guy like Chase Brown to the moon we talked about earlier in the week, I think Chase Brown's the most interesting option to play here because there's so many points in this game. The issue is just Baltimore does not give up rushing yards. They're bottom of the barrel in rushing yards. So can he get there in rushing yards? It seems unlikely, but I think he can get there through the air and play a piece because like we're talking about no T. Higgins, that's what we expect, right? So Chase Brown still should have a really big role. I know they traded for Khalil Herbert, but he just got there. Don't expect to have much of a role this week. I expect him to have a really high opportunity share in this game as well. So if you have him, you fire him up against Baltimore, kind of hopes it works out. It might not, but like you bet on the 50+ point game projected total and see if you can find the end zone.
Yeah, agree with that. This is like the Rico Dowdle situation from the last couple of games. Tony Pollard as well. Bad matchups, but these guys can get there through the air. Ramondre Stevenson got there through the air last week. He caught a ridiculous touchdown from Drake May. I totally agree with you. You got to bet on him. One guy we didn't hit on yet, Najee Harris. He's averaging about 18 carries a game. Yep. I don't think that lessens after the bye. I don't think Jaylen Warren is going to be incredibly involved. He may be more involved, but this team should be, even with the addition of Mike Williams, should be, pounding the rock and continuing to do that. Najee Harris also saw 4 targets just before the bye against the Giants, against Washington again. It would be nice if he can add that to his repertoire and just see a weekly 3 to 4 targets that just raises his floor. And if he scores, he's damn near an RB1. So love Najee this week as well, even though the Washington front is a little bit better than their back end anyway. Let's move on here to the tier 5 of running backs. We started at 25. Raheem Mostert. Just hold on to the ball, Raheem. Really, that's all I got to say. Brian Robinson Jr. at 26, fading him slightly because of the injury, and he's still limited in practice. Rico Dowdle, 27. Rachaad White at 28, followed by Bucky Irving, his teammate at 29 against San Francisco. We're not exactly sure how this is going to work out week to week, but really you flex both of these guys. And you got Tank Bigsby coming in at 30. Mr. Necessary should see the volume here, but they're playing Minnesota, so he could be made obsolete early in the first quarter.
Right. The interesting thing with Rachaad White is he only saw 3 targets last week, and that was probably the most surprising thing of that game because we expected him to have a little bit more, like opportunity share through the air. Yep. Like Kansas City is a tough matchup against running backs. They're one of like the worst teams to play against them. So they could have just like schemed him out of that. Like Bucky had a decent role too. It's just tough with these guys. They're more floor plays than anything else because neither one of them is going to see a lot of work. He did have 62% of snaps. So in another high game scripted total, like against San Francisco, they're going to have to score a lot. We're expecting Baker on this offense to cook. Rachaad White, I think he could be a decent play. And like we saw last week, Rico Dowdle was really good. The problem is we have no Dak Prescott this week, so it's Cooper Rush offense. Yeah. Now, he's going to get a ton of work. Like, I don't think that's really the question because they having issues with Zeke and Dalvin Cook's just cooked at this point. So he can have a high opportunity share. It just seems like he's more of a floor player than a ceiling because, I mean, how many points are they going to score in this game, right? How many yards can they get? So it's really this range of running back. It starts to get kind of dicey where we're looking at guys and we're like, oh, that's not great. Oh, I don't like that guy. The one guy I do like is Brian Robinson. Tyrone Tracy, if you remember, before the bye, went off against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, had 40-something rushing yards against a team that had yet to allow 90 to a single running back. So I think with that Washington front, I want to see if they can continue this against Pittsburgh because they've been, like, it's a bunch of guys we don't know, but they have been really good cohesive unit this year. So I don't mind Brian Robinson because the offense is so good and his role. But to your point, the injury and like even without him, like Eckler was still splitting work. So Eckler could have a decent role, but yeah, I mean, I'd rather play Robinson than Eckler, but I don't mind Eckler this week too.
Yeah, I'm going to do it again. Raheem Mostert. I keep saying it. You just fire him up. The usage is there. Damn near 100 yards. Just did not find the end zone last week, and that's partially because he was benched for a portion of the game for fumbling. If he holds on to the ball, Raheem Mostert is going to perform well for you in your flex. It's a great matchup, so I'm firing him up as well. Let's move on to the tier 6. These are guys 31 through 36. Let's start with Javonte Williams. Terrible matchup, and we do not know how long he will hold the job in Denver. He's playing at Kansas City, so he's our RB31. Travis Etienne, RB32. Will he play? Is he 100%? They're playing Minnesota. Will they let him touch the ball? Is Trevor Lawrence playing? Travis Etienne is our RB32. Tyler Algier in an excellent matchup at New Orleans. RB33. We think he gets some run this week. Ray Davis, same deal for him. RB34 there in Buffalo. Austin Eckler at RB35 versus Pitt. He's just going to continue to get that receiving work. And then Devin Singletary, only because Carolina is so bad, comes in at RB36.
Yeah, this is an interesting group of like running backs we talk about because some of these guys have really bad matchups. Some of these guys have better matchups, but the role isn't great. So it's curious to see how these guys play out, right? So you look across here and you're like, all right, who am I going to start in this range? You could talk yourself into Travis Etienne. I really don't want to. I'm expecting this team to be trailing throughout, which means I do not want to play his running mate. Like, I do not want to do the Tank experience. Like, I'm just not going to do that. The one thing that Tank does have over Etienne is the ability to get the goal line work. He's still going to have that role. It's just how many times are they going to score with like Mac Jones? We don't know. So I think Etienne's more of the PPR similar to Austin Eckler. It's just they're going to be trailing. They're going to be a lot of like negative game trips. If he plays, I don't mind flexing him, but it's a treacherous play. Algier, you talk about like they could have a pretty like hefty lead in the second half, and Algier's that closer. That's kind of how Atlanta treats him. So if they have a double-digit lead in the second half, they're going to rely on him to just close out the game because why let Bijan do that when you can do a guy that's cheaper, not as valuable to you? Just milk those carries and do that for you. That's kind of his role. He's a bigger body back. He punishes defenders, so I like him that way. And yeah, we saw last week like Ray Davis. He got into the end zone. That's really what you're betting on with the majority of these guys. But if he does this again, he could find the end zone, be decent for you. Because he was pretty good against Miami. Indianapolis is a solid matchup. I don't mind the Ray Davis experience, but with the majority of these guys, the floor is just a lot lower. This is where it really starts falling off at running back, where you have a lot of question marks. It's about picking the right guy in the right matchup. So I say if you want to shoot for ceiling, you maybe chase like Ray Davis, or you take a shot on like Austin Eckler. The floor plays seem like more it's like Etienne, and Javonte terrifies me, man. Like it's the worst matchup, and we don't know how his opportunity share is going to go. Right? If they do bring in Audric Estimate a little bit more, it just siphons him even more. So Javonte seems just like a guy I probably need to knock down a ranking because I really just don't want to play him, man.
Yeah, I think it's the Jaleel McLaughlin show in matchups like this where they're going to have trouble kind of running up the gut. We've seen him do this before this season. It doesn't mean I'm relying on McLaughlin at all. I just think, like you said, we fade Javonte here. The other guy I want to talk about, and you mentioned him, Ray Davis. We can't rely on him breaking off like a 65-yard, screen pass or dump off or whatever that was there. And he got in the end zone. But one thing you can rely on with Ray Davis is that over his last 4 games, over the last month, he's seen 35 rushes. He's averaging like 6 yards a carry. So we know that he can get it done on the ground. It just depends if he gets that workload. With James Cook there, probably not, but with the possibility of a positive game script and Keon Coleman potentially out, maybe the Bills lean more on the run in this one. So I like Davis more than most. Algier would probably be the other one, just kind of that garbage time work at New Orleans. Running backs in tier number 7. This is 37 to 42. We will start with Jaylen Warren at 37, Justice Hill at 38 at Cincinnati. That again is Thursday night. Braylon Allen at 39 for some reason at Arizona. That's why. Maybe the Jets go off. We'll see. Roshan Johnson at 40. Again, another good matchup, and he's the guy who can run inside. No Khalil Herbert. Maybe he gets it done. Jordan Mason at 41. Maybe CMC isn't ready for the full workload. We'll see. And Kamani Vidal at 42 just because. Jesse, who do you like?
I always have a soft spot for Kamani Vidal, so he's going to be pumped up in rankings a little bit. But yeah, you kind of know like it is what it is. The interesting thing with Jordan Mason is he full practice on Wednesday. So if McCaffrey does not play this week, Jordan Mason's going to go back to being the RB1 there. So there's significant upside with it. I mean, if McCaffrey plays, like the role is minimal. It's like 5 touches, maybe. Like it's just McCaffrey's that guy. So it's interesting with him in this matchup. Like Tampa Bay, like you could be had. Roshan, you're basically betting on touchdown. This is the entire bet we're making because I think he has 35 rushing attempts on the season. He's done next to nothing, but he does have 4 touchdowns. So he is strictly a touchdown bet. If you're thinking they're going to ground and pound New England to death, it's entirely possible, man. Like that offense
they should actually.
Yeah, like I think that's their best way to success. So we could maybe see him do it against Carolina, where he gives you 10 touchdowns and gives you 10 touches and 2 touchdowns, something like that. Like he just gets a bunch of goal line carries. Siphons DeAndre Swift does that. And yeah, Braylon Allen, it's been really up or down for him. It's really just the coaching staff. They're very Jekyll and Hyde about how they treat him and Breece Hall. If they believe in him that week, he can give you double-digit carries. Some weeks they're like, all right, you get 2 touches. So you don't know how these guys are going to be deployed. So Braylon Allen feels like he's just a very treacherous bet. Against Arizona, their defense is kind of turning around. I don't mind them. And you know what you're getting out of Justice Hill. A few times in negative game scripts or games in the 2-minute warning, he gets those targets. A couple times he doesn't. But like overall, I think he's got, 50 plus touches already on the season. It's not a bad role for him. It's very minimal. And the guy I didn't even touch on is Jalen Warren. Like he's my favorite of this group because I expect them to be trailing. He's going to be on the field more than he is normally. He's going to give the passing down work. Of all of these guys, like I'm playing Jalen Warren. It's really not a contest for me.
Yeah, the problem is you got good defenses all around, right? So how, if the offenses are going to go off, that's kind of where these backups will get in garbage time. You just don't know. And that's kind of the bet I'm making is which offense is most likely to go off as their defense limits it. I think it's probably the Jets at Arizona with Braylon Allen. But Braylon Allen hasn't really seen much work. 2 weeks ago against New England, the Jets did just that. And they gave him 12 touches. Remember, the Jets lost that game, but he did score. He still kind of has that goal line look. So like you said, between Braylon Allen, Roshan Johnson, even Jordan Mason, depending on CMC's status, these are the guys who could fall into the end zone, even as the other guys end up being the lead backs this week. So we'll see. Let's talk about one more tier here. This is our final tier up to running back 48 this week in our weekly consensus rankings. We have Sean Tucker at 43, the 3-headed monster rears its ugly head once again against San Francisco here for the Bucs backfield. Trey Benson at 44 got some work last week and looked pretty decent as far as rookie running backs go. Anyway, Jaleel McLaughlin at 45, Jalen Wright at 46. Talk about a decent looking rookie running back who never sees the field. That is Jalen Wright. 47, Antonio Gibson. I don't know why we rank him. I want to just remove him completely from rankings. And 48, Amari DiMarcado. They played a lot of Benson and DiMarcado last week, but they were crushing the Bears. So who do you like here in this final tier we'll talk about?
Yeah, Benson's interesting. It's because, why am I blanking on my starter's name? James Conner got injured, right? So the James Conner suffered a little injury. They pulled him from the game and let those two kind of go back and forth. Benson, he got 9 touches in the game. DiMarcado had the big plays. He had the big house call. He had a couple of receptions. That seems super unsustainable for DiMarcado. The thing about DiMarcado, though, is if James Conner does not play, which we expect him to, but if that's the case, he misses the game. DiMarcado's the passing down back. Trey Benson's kind of the early down grinder. The problem is the Jets, so you're not expecting really Trey Benson to have a lot of success in this game, but their roles are kind of decided. So if that happens, you know what you're getting. McGoffin had a little bit more work last week. Wasn't very efficient, but he still played a role. His role's just been kind of all over the place. Another guy that's had 50-plus touches in the season. Been kind of up or down. Against Kansas City, I mean, maybe he can get there. I'm not super excited about it. But, yeah, the one guy that you were talking about earlier is Jalen Wright. He's looked really good for this team. It's interesting to see because he's a rookie running back. If they want to bring him along a little bit more, and it's really just if Raheem Mostert can hold him off or not, and that's kind of the bigger issue. Because long-term plans like Jalen Wright is the guy. They traded a third-round pick to trade up and get him this last season. So, and what we've seen from him, he's been super efficient. He's basically averaging 5 yards a clip. He has basically seen nothing in the receiving game, which is really interesting. I thought he'd have a little bit more. But in a game against a Ram that's super high-powered and maybe they want to like change the reins off a little bit from both these guys, he can do a little bit for you. But like we talked about, he needs an injury to be fantasy viable for you. So if there's no injury, it's gonna be really hard for him to get to, or a fumble, like we talked about last week, and that's why they pulled most around the field. So if he gets one of those things, maybe he can build on that, and they have confidence in him. So I think he's more of the stash of like all of these guys.
Yeah, some of these guys are next year plays, or like you said, could get more work with injury. Let's talk about guys we like outside the top 48. Just a quick note: our guy Debro, Derek Brown, projects Jonathan Brooks to do little to nothing this week, maybe a handful of snaps. We got to sit him until further notice. He is our RB 52 as a result. How do you feel about Brooks and anyone else that you like in this tier? Probably not Brooks this week.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see him on the field. Like, we've been waiting a long period of time. We're waiting till week 10. Like, we've seen a couple other guys come back from the ACL injury already ahead of him, aka Nick Chubb. Like, with much worse injury, he came back earlier, so we're kind of like, what's going on here? Seems like Carolina's treating him with kid gloves, and then on top of it, they just inked Chuba Hubbard to like a nice deal money-wise. So it's interesting to see with Jonathan Brooks, but once he gets on the field and he gets that runway to kind of ramp up, I think he will be good for them. It's just going to take some time. Like, they're just being very particular with him because they spent a second-round pick on him. They don't want to like make him get hurt or suffer any injury, right? So they have Chuba Hubbard, who's been a really good rusher this season. So there's no point in forcing him on the field until he's ready. This is the game to see it. It's not a bad matchup. I kind of want to see what he has to offer against the Giants. But yeah, to your point, Debro's point, like we shouldn't be expecting too much from him. He can play a small, limited role, and maybe he looks good and maybe he doesn't, and we'll go from there. But yeah, in this range of running back, it's really treacherous. You're looking at all the guys, and you're like, if you're siphoning through these guys, you're hoping maybe it's like, maybe ETN gets ruled out so you can go Dearness Johnson. Maybe, maybe Corum establishes a little bit more of a role. Or maybe we talk about like CMC misses out and then it's Correndo playing alongside Mason and maybe Mason's dealing it. Right? You kind of have to find ways to talk yourself into these guys. You can do the Dalvin Cook thing if you really want to, but that offense is going to be atrocious. He's really bad. I don't want to do that thing. So we'll see how this works out. The one guy that's kind of buried a little bit is Audric Estime. If he, like most of these rookie running backs, if they can take a bigger step forward, which he's kind of trending toward that direction, maybe he can build up for Sean Payton just because Javonte Williams has been really bad this year. So I think he has a pathway to push Javonte Williams the rest of the season. So I don't mind stashing him, but I don't think you're playing any of these guys.
No. One guy who's interesting, if you have to, I will take a shot on Cam Akers. They're playing Jacksonville last week against Indy, a pretty bad run defense. He had 6 touches, ran off 7.5 yards a clip. And he got 2 looks and receptions in the passing game. He finishes RB 37. So yeah, we're not looking at anything crazy, but it's possible in extreme garbage time that Cam Akers could get you a touchdown. Look, we have bye weeks, we have injuries, we have large starting rosters. So there's a chance that we might need to plug in these guys. One other guy, as I'm slightly stalling here to look up his stats from last week, is Kenneth Gainwell. Saquon Barkley does ridiculous Saquon Barkley things, but the Philadelphia Eagles are playing a ridiculous team in the Dallas Cowboys this week. So ridiculous that Kenneth Gainwell should see a ton of work in the second half. I do not know why. Philadelphia would roll out their starters in the fourth quarter in this one with Cooper Rush and maybe CeeDee Lamb and nobody on the Dallas defensive side of the ball. I really think that, this is going to be a spot you can start Kenneth Gainwell. Is he able to get you points? I don't know. But he's received, 13, 5, and 5 rushes over the last 3 weeks. So there's a potential for decent volume. And again, we're talking about that RB 30, RB 35 range. But if he falls into the end zone, he could be an RB2.
Yeah, I think if you look back to week 7, Saquon Barkley, the coaches asked him, they're like, hey, you have this many rushing yards. Do you want to push for your career personal best record? He goes, no, let the other guys eat. So in that game, to your point, that's where Gainwell got more carries. He got 13 carries. He gave you 7 fantasy points. Like, he was fine. It's like that type of game performance we're talking about. If it gets out of hand, Saquon Barkley's like, let the young bucks eat. Like, then Gainwell gets a little bit more. So yeah, this game's expected to be a blowout. We could definitely see that happen for Gainwell.
Absolutely. So that is it. On that note, we will stop talking about the consensus running backs here for what are we in, week 10? Oh, man, I am having some sort of weird vertigo where I do not know where I am in this universe. Fantasy football is driving me crazy. It's a love-hate relationship. I love it all the time. But sometimes you just get lost in it, right? Just pouring through the data and trying to figure out the rankings and which teams are up and down. I'm making trades. I got 3-6 team and I traded for Tony Pollard. What the hell am I doing? It's just a wild, long season, and you just try and stay afloat any way that you can. So we are the Fantasy Football Universe. We are here daily, putting out content all across platforms on fantasyfootballuniverse.com, on X, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Reddit. We're in those Reddit streets as well. So join us anywhere and everywhere. If you like this content, we are live 4 times a week. We have these recorded shows another couple times. So again, and between that and shorts, we have video content daily. We have written content almost daily. So we're everywhere, giving you all of the information. And if you like this, please like and subscribe. That helps us a ton. We appreciate all of you. I appreciate this guy. And so for him, for me, we are going to say goodbye for next time, for week 10, I think it is, for the Thursday night games. Enjoy. Oh my God, I got to end this and get out of here. I'm rambling. See you later.